His face appeared to be floating in the air. Terrified, I could only stare into the hollow and unseeing eyes, for so they seemed in the flickering light. "Is that you, Charlotte?" came a voice. His voice. "What are you?" I managed to ask. The head drew closer. "Don't you know me?" the voice said. I stammered. "Are you real?" "Charlotte, don't you see me?" came the voice, more insistent than before. Now the light, it was a small candle, was held up and I could see more of him, the very image of Zachariah, but sadly altered too. In life had never appeared strong or large. In death he'd become shriveled, graybeard. "What do you want?" I demanded, shrieking back into the furthest corner of the brig. "To help you," the voice said. "But you died," I whispered. "I saw your funeral. They wrapped you in a hammock and dropped you into the sea." A soft laugh, his laugh. "Close to death, surely, Charlotte. But not altogether dead. Come, touch me. See for yourself." Cautiously, I moved forward, reached out and touched his hand. Real flesh, and warmth. "And the hammock?" I wondered in astonishment. He laughed again. "A full hammock, to be sure, but empty of me. It's an old sailor's trick. No doubt if I had remained in Jaggery's hands, I would have died." "Have you been seen in the hold all along?" "Ever since." I could only stare. "Keach brings me food and water every day," he continued. "The food's not as good as I would have prepared, but enough to keep me alive. Look here, Charlotte. If poor Crannock could hide, why not Zachariah? It was Keach's notion." "Why wasn't I told?" "It was decided not to tell you." "Why?" "You forget, Charlotte. You informed upon us." "That was then, Zachariah," I said, my face burning. "True enough, and I've been told about you, young soul of justice. There's much to be admired. I salute you." "I wanted to fill your place." He smiled. "Didn't I once say how much we were alike? A prophecy. But you're not regretting I'm alive, are you?" "No, of course not. But if I hadn't been caught of sight of you during the storm, would I have ever seen you?" "I cannot say. The captain might have discovered you then. Why did you come up?" "What would be the point of staying here and perishing if I could have been of help? You saved me from falling. One shipmate helps another." "What about Captain Jackery?" I asked. "Does he know you're here?" "Now, Charlotte, do you think if he believed me alive, he'd allow for me to be here, even for a moment?" "Do you? I suppose not," I admitted. "There you are. That's all the proof I need. He doesn't know. The hope is this," he went on. "When the Seahawk reaches Providence, not very long from now, I understand you shall see. Jaggery will keep the crew on board, not wanting them to talk to anyone. But I'll be able to get off. And when I do, I'll go to the authorities and expose him for what he is. Now what do you think?" Even as I grasped the plan, I felt a pang of embarrassment that compelled me to turn away. "What's the matter?" The pain in my heart made it impossible for me to speak. "Tell me," he coaxed. "Zachariah." "What?" "You're a black man." "That I am. But this state of Rhode Island where we're going, it has no more slaves." He suddenly checked himself. Or am I wrong? "A black man, Zachariah, a common sailor, testifying against a white officer." I didn't have the heart to finish. "Ah, but Charlotte, didn't you once tell me it was your father who's part of the company that owns the Seahawk?" "You did. The plan is to go to him. You'll give me a good character, won't you? And if he's like you, there's nothing to fear." A tremor of unease passed through me, and I wasn't sure of what to say. I stole a glance at him. "But what about Crannock?" I asked. "Did he die, truly?" "More's the pity," he said with a shake of his head, and a lapse into silence. Then he looked up. "Now then," he said, "I have talked too much of myself. I saw Barlow bring you here, and lock you in. Did you mock Jaggery again?" I was taken aback. "Didn't anyone tell you?" "Tell me what?" "Zachariah. Mr. Holybrass was murdered." "Murdered?" he cried. "When?" "During the storm. I wasn't told." "Why not?" "I cannot imagine." He grew thoughtful and even glanced toward the ladder. Then abruptly, he turned back to me and said, "But what's that to do with you?" "Zachariah. It's the reason why I'm here. The captain has accused me." "You?" Again he seemed surprised. I nodded. "But surely, Charlotte, you did nothing of the kind." He looked around. "Or did you?" "No." "Then there's no more to be said." I shook my head, Zachariah. I went on. "The crew seems to side with Jackery, to think it was me." "I cannot believe that," he exclaimed. "Zachariah, it's true." He gazed at me in perplexity. Now is it my turn to ask? Why? The murder was done with the dirk you gave me. What proof is that? Someone must have taken it in your things in the forecastle. Zachariah, when I moved to the forecastle, I left it in my cabin. Then of course you have nothing to do with it. They don't believe I left it there. Charlotte, you are not given to lies, he said. When you first saw me, Zachariah, did you think that I would ever go before the mast? No. Or climb the rigging during a storm? Not at all. Well then, why shouldn't I have murdered Mr. Hollybrass as well? I'm sure that's the way they're thinking. My words silenced him for a few moments. His face clouded, but instead of commenting, he stood up. I have a store of food and water here. I'll get some. Securing the candle to a plank, he moved into the darkness. I watched him go, puzzled and troubled by his reaction to what I'd said. While he had appeared genuinely surprised, it seemed impossible that he hadn't been told. And indeed, as he vanished into the gloom, a ghastly notion began to fill my head. Perhaps it was Zachariah who killed Mr. Hollybrass. No doubt he would have killed the captain, given the chance. As for the first mate, had Zachariah done it to strike fear into Captain Jaggery? The very idea was loathsome to me, and yet, my racing mind began to construct an entire conspiracy. The crew, knowing Zachariah was alive, might have guessed, perhaps for certainty, that he had done the crime, but would not acknowledge it. Now with the captain accusing me, they were being asked to choose between me and Zachariah, their old comrade. A decision on their part to defend him would be understandable. It would go far to explain why they abandoned me. But before I could puzzle out my thoughts, Zachariah returned with a jug of water and a hard tack loaf. Mealy as the bread was, I was glad to have it. Do you wish to be free of there? He asked, nodding toward my cage. It's locked. A sailor knows his ship, he said softly. Reaching toward the back of the brig, he pulled the 2 bars out from what I now realized were rotten sockets. Come along, he said, but be ready to bolt it if anyone comes. I did so, and we sat side by side, our backs against a barrel in the flickering candlelight. Zachariah, I said. The captain had said he'd bring me to trial. Do you think he means it? That's his right. And if he does hold a trial, what will happen? He'll judge and jury and find you guilty. And then, I asked, when Zachariah didn't answer, I said, tell me. I cannot believe he'd go so far. As to hang me? His silence was answer enough. For a while, we both remained silent. Zachariah, I said, I need to know. Did anyone else besides me see you during the storm? I exchanged words. With whom? Does it make a difference? Maybe. He considered. Fisk, he said after a moment, and Keach. Then it's likely the entire crew knew you came up. It's possible, he said with a sudden frown. Had you read my mind, Zachariah? I said softly. It's bound to be one of your mates who killed Hollybrass. Charlotte, he said with a sigh. That's true. Every one of them might have a good reason. But look here. Once we discover who it is, we can decide what to do. I kept glancing sidelong at him, trying to read his mind. More and more convinced that it was he who was the murderer, still I lacked the courage to ask it. Tell me all you know, he said. I related what little I could, from the discovery of Mr. Hollybrass's body to Captain Jaggery's accusation. My words made him more thoughtful. Charlotte, he said finally, that dirk, did you tell anyone else you had it? I cast my mind back. Shortly after you gave the blade to me, I recalled. I wanted to give it back. Remember, Zachariah, when you refused to take it? I offered it to the captain. He turned around sharply. But why? I was afraid of it. And you? Still. No? But I was then. Did you tell him where you got it? I shook my head. It's not like him to let the matter go at that. He must have demanded an answer. He did. And? I made one up. Did he believe it? I thought so. What followed? He said I should keep it, place it under my mattress. And did you? Yes. Did anyone else know you had it? I thought hard. Dillingham. What about him? When I was going to give it back to you, I was holding it in my hand. Dillingham saw it. I know he did. And if he told the others, Zachariah must out loud. Then there's not a soul aboard who could not know of it. The moment he said it, I knew he was right. And I remembered something else. Zachariah also told me to put it under my mattress. I glanced around and caught him stealing a sidelong look at me. Zachariah, I didn't kill Hollybrass. I was aloft when it happened. And when I went aloft, it was the captain who gave me a knife to use. I didn't even have one. What happened to the one he gave you? I lost it, he grunted. Neither yes nor no. Once more I could taste my accusation of him on my tongue. Even as I thought, the candle gutted and went out. The darkness seemed to swallow my ability to talk. But Zachariah talked, a sudden surprising torrent, dark tales about each member of the crew. Every jack of them, he claimed, had run afoul of the law at some time or other. Not mere snitch, thieves, or cut purses either. Some were true felons. More compelling than what he said was what he did not say. The more Zachariah talked, the more convinced I was that his rambling chatter was meant to keep us from the crucial question. Who killed Mr. Hollybrass? And the more the question was avoided, the more certain I was that it was he. But how can I accuse him? The captain would have to know that he was alive, and that knowledge would have mean Zachariah's certain death. Also, it would mean the end of the crew's plan, which required Zachariah, for bringing Captain Jackery to justice. No wonder I couldn't ask him the question. I did not want to know. A noise startled me. I felt Zachariah's hand on my arm, a warning. A shaft of light dropped into the darkness. I could see that the cargo hatch on deck had been pulled open. In moments, we heard someone on the ladder. I scurried back to the brig. Zachariah hastened to close the bars. Then he retrieved his water jug and disappeared from my sight. I did not know where. I looked toward the ladder and saw Captain Jaggery descending slowly. He carried a lantern and had a pistol tucked in his belt. When he reached the foot of the ladder, he paused and looked about, as if making an inspection of the hold. Finally, he approached the brig. There he lifted the lantern and scrutinized me as if I were something. It was a look filled with hatred, such as I had never seen before, or since. Its clear, precise intensity given greater force by his state of personal disorder. His unkempt hair, his dirty face, the trembling muscle along his jaw. At last he said, "Miss Doyle, to have murdered a shipmate, an officer, is a capital offense. The penalty for such an act is death by hanging. Let me assure you, a trial is not required, the evidence being altogether clear. I have the right to sentence you without trial, but I insist that you have your fairness. It shall be not me who judges you. I'm not such a fool as that. No, the judgment will be made by those whom I've taken as your equals, your shipmates." So saying, he undid the padlock on the brig and pulled the gate open. "So be it, Miss Doyle, your trial commences."